This podcast is for entertainment, education, and inspirational purposes only. Nothing in this podcast is diagnostic or direct medical advice and does not establish a practitioner-patient relationship. Seek care from a highly trained medical provider for your healthcare concerns. Yinspired is dedicated to all the grandmothers, aunties, and mothers whose voices weren't heard or listened to. Created for the daughters. Aloha and welcome back to Yinspired, a podcast celebrating different perspectives in Chinese medicine and integrative medicine. Here, we have casual conversations with everyday practitioners, patients, and students exploring the messy truths of medicine, healing, the taboo, and life. I'm your host, Dr. Haunani Chong-Drake, a clinical doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, a cultural practitioner and steward, mom, dog mama, and military spouse. I'm very excited to bring Jen Lindgren. She is a dear friend, soul sister, and I am just so excited for you to hear about the way she moves through this world and bringing healing to different communities that not many of us often interact with. So Jen, welcome to Yinspired. Thank you for sharing your light with us today.
Oh, Hanani, thank you so very much. Really, truly honored to be here. Again, my name is Jen Lindgren. I work as the director of training for an organization called Prison Yoga Project, a global organization here, but I'm also a trauma survivor and I'm a mama and a cat grandmother, I think I am, and friend and community member, second generation U.S. citizen on one side of my family, and have original colonizing ancestors on the other side of my family, and just coming at this work from just coming up as a human. So again, super excited to just chat with you today.
Thank you so much. When did we first meet this lifetime? Because we've known each other for many a lifetimes. It was one of those, oh, I know you, I remember you kind of moment when we met. Was it in Portugal?
100%. Yeah, I think we had some online training things because
That's
I was
right.
working on my 500 hour and
Yeah.
you were one of our facilitators. And then, we got to hug in Portugal.
So Portugal is where we would have met in person. And since then, we have been deeply connected through the amazing work that we were both doing, but more so in these last few years of being in the Prison Yoga Project's lineup of guest teachers. But to build some background for our listeners, I always like to start off with trying to get to know a little bit about, younger Jen and how does younger Jen, how do you get to where you are today? What was your relationship with medicine, other forms of medicine, spirituality growing up? And how does that weave into where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, like all of our stories, it's fun and it takes some tangents and there's a whole bunch of, I don't know, random things. But I was, the child of teen parents. My parents were 15 and 17 when I was born. In the mid 70s, they were highly encouraged to get married without choice, which didn't last very long. But right from being a really young child, my mom was a nurse's aide. My mom would bring me to the senior center and the veterans homes that she volunteered at and then ended up teaching at. Really, so much of my medical background or my relationship with medicine comes from my mom always being a learner, always from a nursing student to a master's of nursing student and a clinical manager. I remember even just her coming into really general practice and for her first hospital during the AIDS pandemic as well, and that she was so adamant to bring my younger brother and I to work with her, just support and play cards with individuals who were going through their AIDS treatments. And we were volunteers to unfurl the quilt when it came to New Hampshire. And just always just pushing medicine, pushing patient rights, pushing advocacy. And then on the flip side, my grandfather was a counselor in youth corrections. So I really had these two pillars of my mom being so focused on medicine, on healthy and aging with dignity, always drawn into hospice line and really supporting veteran populations as well, trauma survivors. And then to have my grandfather on the flip side of a deep understanding of where people's life path takes them to lead to incarceration right from youth. And I just feel like somewhere around there, I was a little kindergartner curious about incarceration and race and healthcare and just sort of grew up always with this, deep respect for where their callings were, but also where do I fit in here? I, as a teenager, became a volunteer for Planned Parenthood at the time had a teen options clinic that taught sexual education. So I was one of those, super, super cool high school students going and doing like condom demonstrations and promoting safe sex and gender identity in the 90s in schools and, marched in my first pride parade in, I think, 1992 in Boston and had a beer bottle broken over my shoulder. Just kind of all these little magic things. My biological father experienced incarceration. My very loving, amazing, incredible stepfather now is a physician. I worked in medical health management for about 15 years. And when it sort of became profit over people, that's when I became a yoga teacher and started to work in the prison system. So I don't think I have a choice to do. I mean, it's just am kind of this work, right from being a tiny, tiny kid to just seeing all the stuff.
Wow, and thank goodness. I mean, it's so amazing how all those tiny pieces, like whether they're puzzle pieces laid out before us, drawing us into the work we were eventually or ultimately going to do is just it's beautiful to hear that. Thank you so much. So how do you go from being in the when I say medical establishment, you were doing a lot of on the billing side, right? Insurance from what I understand?
A
Or were
little
you
bit of
patient
everything.
advocacy?
Kind of a little. I mean, it was in more management, so I was a practice assistant manager for a while. I had started really in as a ward secretary in a hospital on a med-surg floor, medical surgical floor, just deciphering doctor's language for orders and things, and then, had got into more office work, in a urology practice, a specialty practice. So I did some, kind of new patient onboarding and education, also surgical scheduling and sort of again kind of always in that patient education place, and then ended up just working through to be an assistant manager and then a practice manager. And it was that practice manager, I think, that broke me. It was in pediatrics, and really kind of coming into a place where it was the majority of my kind of medical career was always in a nonprofit hospital environment where there was still a lot of community engagement, a lot of outreach, just again, a lot of that very charitable care that felt very aligned. And I had moved to a different facility that was a for profit hospital and working in pediatrics there. And it was during a time that insurance companies were renegotiating, and there were some really sick kiddos were losing their care because the network changed. So, really advocating for that. And I ended up actually being let go from that position because I was spoken to so many times about advocating for the patients to have the care they needed and not necessarily following the policy of the organization. So, yeah, and then I said, I'm not going to healthcare doesn't feel right for me anymore in this capacity. I wasn't a clinician, so there was, I felt very powerless to actually have any type of support for the patients. So I decided to train as a yoga teacher and, see where that fit in. But, waitress during that time and worked as a temp in a few places. My daughter was in middle school at the time. So definitely took a bit of a disruption to what we kind of felt was a little bit of a stable life and really turned it upside down to I was a it felt like a terrible human even, so stressed in those times of kind of coming in and, um, it was as much of a savior of me to change careers and to switch into this work and, um, much to the, I think, disappointment at the time of some family members just because there's stability in career and there's this, and then to come and
Benefits.
yeah, and then to come
Yeah.
and switch into being a bit of a wanderer, and a kind of a little bit of a hustle in there of how to make things go together. But I think it was a really powerful message for my daughter to say, this is not aligned with anything to do with me, and I'm gonna kind of fight for what is, and you know, we're gonna we're gonna be real creative in what we eat and where we go.
To be able to walk your talk, to live
100%.
integrity, I mean, what a beautiful role model I mean, for yourself and for your own heart and your own spirit, but also for your daughter and your family to see that. do you ever take a moment to just kind of reflect on those bumpy years and see what's transpired from all that to bring some reflection or
All the time. Well, it's the work. Now I work as a yoga facilitator, and I'm supporting individuals who are coming through their own either traumatic life journey or just sorting it out. How do things fit? Where I think sometimes as humans, there's so much pressure to be the thing that we were supposed to be, or just these, when I become this, I'll be worthy of this, or just a lot of these statements that we make. And I feel like the practice of yoga, which I've been practicing for about 30 years in the philosophical sense, was kind of a constant anchor and a constant grounding in going through this. To be like, I really am aligned with my truth. I really am, trying to create this opportunity here that, you know, I can't get out of my head, but might not be in everyone's vision yet. And to really be able to keep sharing that and to keep encouraging folks who, again, might feel misaligned with where they are in their life, but there's this little heartstring that keeps pulling to something, and to really be able to encourage not only that path to where do you know you belong, but also how can there be support for the healing of the residue that you're carrying with you to kind of find that next step in that space. So I feel like my every day, it's always kind of looking through this and being really, really appreciative of the whole journey. And it's not a finished journey at all, but just of where that is. So yeah, I take great reverence and respect often, to kind of say, wow, this idea really did come together.
yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
So
So paint us a picture of what your work looks like now. For those who don't know the Prison Yoga Project, in some of our past episodes, it's been focused around medicine or a particular condition or what it's like to be a certain type of practitioner or provider. But I really get the sense today's conversation with you and everything that we always talk about is healing. Like, what does it actually mean to be on a healing journey? What does that look like? What is healing? And then also through this very unique lens and community that you get to serve through incarceration of all different ages and stages. So give us a little snapshot of what is the Prison Yoga Project? How do you fit into that? What should people know as we're having this conversation?
well, there's so many things. So let's see. I would say the very first piece of it is, to come back, kind of take a little detour into the four agreements and come into this space of not making assumptions about this population of our human family who has experienced some things. I think being a child of an incarcerated individual, being the grandchild of someone who worked on the supportive side of kind of corrections or carceral setting, and definitely having family and friends and uncles and cousins who have experienced incarceration also, to kind of start this whole conversation around not making assumptions, and that the focus of this organization is reducing harm collectively, that there's truly an inward support for the individuals who are experiencing incarceration, but it's the healing journey there of accountability, of understanding absolutely harm inflicted by individuals who are in this place in their life, but also really understanding harm endured as well, and where that sort of places of either overcome of their own personal life journey, but where were there no resources, where whether it was coming from a healthcare standpoint or a housing standpoint or food security, just generational trauma of whether it be domestic violence or substance abuse or just lived incarcerated generations, but kind of being able to go in. So I essentially offer mindfulness healing practices. Personally, I work as the director for the organization and oversee training programs that come in, but I'm also a facilitator. And that's, I want to say, where, I mean, the magic is for me to be able to go individually. I serve in a women's facility, also a women's transitional facility for individuals who are no longer incarcerated in the prison, but are still under the state's care in transitional housing, and then men's facilities as well, and supporting specific units that are focused on mental health and also substance misuse and also general population. And our classes are essentially, for those of you who are listening who understand a practice of yoga, some part of what we do is changing the stigma of yoga and really supporting individuals who may feel, a lot of those stereotypical things. I'm not flexible enough. I'm not this. I'm not patient enough to sit quietly. A lot of the things that we sort of, I want to say like capitalism and westernization has kind of harmed the practice of yoga and isn't the full picture of what this practice offers. So when we were going in and sharing these practices, it's really coming from a mindfulness standpoint of the core philosophy of the practice that, we're going to first and foremost examine harm and really understand, again, harm endured by an individual, harm inflicted, and how does that continue to separate someone's connection to themselves and really deeply into the foundation of truth and non-stealing and all the things that yoga philosophy covers. But we're also, has this work, and we've partnered with individuals in Sweden and around the world in the work of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, to really bring a scientific place into this as well, of supporting, again, individuals to have an understanding of their embodied energy. How are you carrying stress? How are you carrying your emotions? How are you, you know, reacting to stimulation that's happening around you? And to really bring these tools for regulation to individuals. So we talk about, where do you hold tension? What is your emotional range of motion? Are you in a location and suddenly you feel angry or afraid or overwhelmed? And to start to really bring some language and dialogue into personal experience of those embodied reactions. Do you notice that you're getting hot, that you're jittery, that you're whatever, and bringing these spaces in? And then really coupling that with, once we have an understanding of the energy that we carry, here's some tools and techniques for being able to support that energy, to release the excess energy, to stir up sort of that lethargic energy, and continue to build from there. Yes, we're doing some yoga postures. There's some things there, but it's really so much more of education from this ancient philosophy and, this scientific wisdom as well. What is our emotional and physical range of motion? How can we again create these opportunities to pause in an instant or as an experience is happening, to be able to really notice what is happening right now, and then to give self space to choose your response. And this is coming from a place, again, of individuals who perhaps did have an experience of being very reactionary, very just disconnected from their own impulses, or just stuck in survival mode where everything is an immediate reaction. So much of what we offer in these programs is this self education to find a pathway to connecting and feeling comfort in here, also acknowledging and finding space within self to acknowledge, again, harm inflicted, and then continue that healing journey, humanizing the system of incarceration, which sometimes has a lot of inhumane impacts to it, and really supporting folks to find a place of connection and rehabilitation. There are not many where and we can go into a whole separate conversation on mass incarceration, especially in the United States. But there's not a lot of individuals who are sentenced for life. And there's a lot of recidivism because people are just not getting the tools and resources they need to re-enter society in a way that's safe for themselves, in a way that's safe for their communities. So we really try to shift the culture of incarceration to create, again, safer environments within corrections officer, for civilian staff, for the individuals who are in the care of those facilities, and then outward. So that's a huge big part. And then I also offer our training programs and teach our teacher training to support individuals who want to do this work, to really be able to find those pathways from, again, a traditional yoga setting to really bringing the deep philosophy and the education and the science to come in and hold space for folks who have been through some stuff.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you again and again and again for hearing this calling. We were just talking before we hit record, all the books, right? Like you're such a learner. You devour all different types of education topics. You just have that thirst for learning. I'm curious, why yoga? What was that calling where you were like, yoga is going to be this new path that brings me into this work that I'm going to do?
Well, I think it was gifted to me. I think someone who was wiser and more informed as me saw me at a place of crisis when I was 19 years old and doing drugs and self-medicating and not in a safe space from my own trauma recovery, and said, "Hey, come and breathe with me. Come and learn a bit about this practice that I've been learning." And that was almost 30 years ago now. I'm in my 50th year this year, and I was 19 when I was introduced to the practice. And as I continued to have experiences in my life, I lost a spouse years ago, kind of shortly after. And that, I think, was what really brought me back into the philosophy side of yoga. I think when I originally entered it, as a lot of people do, it was sort of as a little bit of a regulation pathway, but much more as a fitness pathway. I had danced when I was younger. It was a kind of a natural transition to come into the physical part of the yoga practice. But when I was really going through, um, again, losing a spouse, trying to hold together some type of something for my daughter, who was only 3 at the time. It was also a traumatic brain injury that it ended up occurring, or a car accident, a whole bunch of things that led to that. But again, it really brought in just curiosity about our brain and our brain functions, and again, these layers of trauma that come in, and everything just kept pointing back for me to yoga. Again, to this foundation of, like, let's look at the harm. Let's look at, the truth of what's happening here. How can we create opportunities? What is excess? And when are we seeking all the stuff outside of ourselves when, we could be coming in here, and just time and time again, the answers that I personally were looking for really came back into yoga philosophy. It became a point where I was daily practice for myself, supporting my daughter, who is a middle schooler, had, "I need to go and take a time out and meditate a little bit." Not her words, but yeah, so I just, again, it was a gift that was given to me of someone who maybe saw something that I needed, and was willing to, on a pool table in a bar, to say, "Come and breathe with me and do this thing." And it just thankfully never went away, that even in those continued detours that I took over the years, to really come back to a deep dedication to, this practice, and also advocating for it, because I think that there's a lot of harm, that it's still illegal in some states to bring yoga into school, and I think that there's just such a misunderstanding of what this practice is. Again, we can segue into, this being, encompassing of individuality, and I think that a lot of times in society, when people are empowered and know their truth and stand up for what they believe in, that's not always the goal and objective of some governing bodies. And I think that yoga was a little bit of, some propaganda against it for a while, and still now coming into spaces. And I'm a yoga teacher in prisons, and there's, again, a lot of assumption about what that might look like. And to have a practice that is a daily reminder to not harm yourself or others, and a daily reminder to honor people's truths and create opportunities for people to live their truth. A pursuit of individual, we sort of say within the organization this, and it's not our words, but, this just individual sovereignty and the celebration of your own, but the celebration of others. And what can we do as a community, as a civilization, as a human family, of knowing and believing, and just, you know, the core of what we're capable of in this beautiful planet is for every single one of us who are here to be exactly who only we can be. And this is what the practice of yoga supports people to understand. And for whatever reason, humans, time and time and time again, just want to conform or change or dim the light, or, harm the individuals who just deserve to kind of shine. And I just believe that. And then yoga was like, "Hey, that's what I've been saying for thousands of years." So it's like, okay, let me be one of the people to kind of share a little bit of what that message is, and maybe some folks will use this and find this as a beneficial tool as well.
Yeah, it sounds like right at the time where maybe personally you were looking for a lighthouse, it blinked, it like showed itself. It was like over here. And it could have been, there's so many wonderful, beautiful maps towards healing, towards this practice of coming back to self as part of the whole. And for you, it was this path of yoga, this philosophical, and also it's not just philosophical, there's actual practices we can do with our breath, with our mind, with our bodies to give us an experience of that philosophy. Despite my history or with my history, with all these things, I am here. I am alive. I am whole despite what other people have put on me, my names, my roles, my convictions, my diagnoses. But I am here, and what can I do with that? I mean, what a breath of life you are bringing to so many people who may other people may have given up on or written off or, like I said, labeled.
Well,
This
it
work is
is.
a calling, right?
No, it absolutely is. No, and I don't, I mean, I guess it's just what I have to do. Like, I just, and not in a way that feels just forced or, I'm fully consenting, to this journey, but, um, yeah, I don't know. I think again, for any individual who's ever experienced the pathway within their life where there's just that missing piece of, some things feel aligned, some things I'm on board within my life and my experience, but there's something that's just there that is who I am. And still on that journey as well. But this is the absolute closest to, like, I'm just me. I'm just here and, with all the things. I think yoga is also, you know, kind of custom made for all the learning styles and, every neurodivergent brain and every kind of thing, because there's that practical application and there's some philosophy and there is some tangible things that but there's so many different ways to come in and be able to seek that contentment and also have this pathway that, oh, the good vibes only and all these things that are, additional kind of outside propaganda towards a balanced life, to just say, do I feel comfortable in this? Forever, the discussion of just our traveling meat suit that we have in was a term that I loved before. And I think the very first time you said it, I was like, this is how we are just sisters on this planet. You just live in a meat suit too. But we deserve to be comfy in this meat suit and remember that, these beautiful brains that we have that sometimes get stuck in the thinking that our bodies are just as intelligent and that these are not two disconnected parts of some random being that, we're all in here and everywhere. But yeah.
Yeah, no, for the person who I mean, what really drew me I first came through Ayurveda, so the healing practices side, but for those who really like learning, like the heady reading, yoga provides so much, right? Just like the depth and breadth of where you can go. I mean, you cannot get bored. It's just so deep. And couple that with now like neurobiology and psychoimmunology. I mean, people can, for those who are very much more of like, I want to know the whys and the hows, all that information is now available. And I know you bring that into the training. And I can also see how that suits you so well for just the Jen I know that is it likes that part too, the geeky educational piece as much as the somatic feel good or discomfort with the practice brings up both. It's not all roses, as you were saying.
100%. And also space to just like stomp and have a little tantrum. Like there's
True.
room for that too. That it can be
Yes.
completely unstructured as well. And, just throw your arms like a Muppet. Like there's just a lot of, yeah, there's something for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking about prison yoga project, but what I hear you saying, I mean, this is for everyone. Like we're all seeking that. Deep down, we're all really seeking that. We're all truly just seeking how do I feel the most free? In this world that has all these rules and constrictions and roles and titles, it's like, but what does that mean for me? Like I can't control what other people think of me. I can't control how other people perceive me and my actions. But
So,
like I just want to be free.
100%. And it's a pathway too for examining our perception and continuing to really, again, use a lot. So, yogic term of samskara.
Yeah.
Big fan of this, but essentially, and this, I apologize ahead of time if there are yogic philosophers who are rolling their eyes at this comparison, but I think of it a lot as classical conditioning, as sort of, Pavlov's dog who had his just like the dog just wanted to eat his sweet food and someone kept ringing a bell and just messing with his whole constitution. And I think that, over generations and generations and generations of society, we've created so many of these societal samskaras that, yoga has this pathway to start to objectively look at our world and what are the things that we've kind of have gone along with or have been forced to go along with that are not aligned, that don't support and represent everyone in our communities, or, you know, to kind of come into this space of, a deeper awakening to not only ourselves and how do we identify with maybe what are some of those conditioning ways that we talk to ourselves, and whether it's a negative self-talk or just not recognizing our right to be comfortable and content, to kind of taking this out into community as well, that so much of this practice is also very individualistic, very much almost that, bring the oxygen mask to yourself first and then go and support others. But to come into this space where, you know, there's this phrase is everywhere, but, hurt people, and
Yeah.
healing people begin to see people and heal as well. To sort of look at where we are globally with, the same wars, the same harm, the same enslaved individuals, the same just, you know, hierarchy of all the, like effery for lack of a better word. And I don't want to like
You
jump
can
out on
swear.
like, oh,
You can
good, the
swear.
fuckery of the world right now. But how could there be benefit to just slowing down and recognizing harm? Like what is causing my motivation? What is actually here within this space? There's so much, I think, personal opinion, so please disagree. But so many of the things that are happening in our world right now have such a foundation in fear or in ignorance or in ego or in just aversion or attachment, which yoga has, like that's yoga too. Those are the kleshas, these sort of ways that humans suffer. But to kind of compound that over generations and generations, again, where there are folks who lived and were raised to covet the stuff and to oppress those getting in the way of the more stuff, and where does that flip come in our perspective to really be able to see that clearly and to begin to dismantle these places, not dismantle humans, but dismantle these systems that are just so harmful. Where is that level of regulation in the people who are supposed to be creating regulations for humans? Where is that true vision of seeing, or is there a pursuit of the stuff external of ourselves and these strong attachments? I always say, like, an addiction to power and privilege isn't always an addiction that we talk about in the world. That you sort of have your Alcoholics Anonymous and your anonymous things of addiction, but never really look at the actions of an individual who's truly in this level of addiction with their own power and privilege. And how does that shift your biology? How does that shift how you're acting in the world? Where are your motivations for all when you're in your own active addiction? And I don't think there's enough consideration to where we are in the world right now and truly how many individuals may be acting under this experience and under this influence of their own active addiction. Because a lot of things that are happening in politics right now look a lot like things that we learn in drug and alcohol counseling, on just a global human scale of destruction and manipulation and cover up. But it just, I think that there's something there.
Oh my gosh, I want to just peel back your brain right now because I know what you're getting at is like it's just the patterning at a larger scale. We have patterns of our lives. You were talking about the samskara, the grooves of our mind, our behavior, our patterns personally, but what you're also speaking to is these are the same patterns that we have familially. We have certain grooves or patterns. And then we have it culturally, these certain patterns. And then we have it nationally, right? There's these things that we're stuck in these grooves. And so you're pointing out that underneath it all, no matter what the groove is we're coming from this place of like fear of like, I feel comfortable in my groove, so I'm going to protect it.
No,
That
100.
protection and fear are the same, or, the two sides of the coin is like fear. Well, then comes protection. That's what our biology knows. And so if we're all just out there trying to protect our groove without stopping to ask, what groove am I actually protecting? And what you're saying is a lot of it comes back to power, greed, privilege. I had never thought about it that way. I know samskara, I know power. I mean, we have these, but like, it's like my brain is just exploding right now of seeing it like so clearly now.
But we do society, like I'm a student of, like, originally started with world literature, then theology and history, like just on this forever pursuit of, more anthropology in my life. But looking at human patterns of history, that we do get just stuck in these loops. But there's, again, always we're at the mercy of prophets and scribes. So the individuals who could afford to write the things, or, what's carried forward in history. And we're witnessing in real time the erasure that has happened, again, generation after generation after generation, where there's these brilliant minds and ideas that are just wiped out because the resources weren't there to preserve those voices, and the importance of, and I know that you, it's everything that you come in and share for our YTT groups, of really being stewards of that knowledge. But coming in and looking at these loops where, as we look through time, has there always been a bully? And has there always been a bully, like, really oppressing individuals? Has there always been support for that, rather fear or own ego, or just alignment in a task? It's just these continued loops that do happen globally. They happen in a family. They happen absolutely on the schoolyard, where it's just these learned traits that continue to loop us through. So what happens if we put a little pause in there and say, let's look at this with a foundation of non-harm? Let's look at the, and start to provide resources. There's, like, where did that harm initiate? And where did it happen generationally? And what is that root cause of support for each individual? Another thing with working in the carceral setting is, again, there is that very real understanding and realization that the individuals who are there had caused some harm at some point in their life, to the degree that they're now incarcerated. So do we not address that and address the root cause of why? What do those individuals endure? And how can we now go into providing knowledge and education and support, whether an individual is going to be incarcerated for their lifetime or rejoin community? Does that person not deserve to understand their own chemistry and when the decisions that they made? Have tools and resources for finding contentment. Not everyone agrees. There's a whole, well, we can debate that again. I personally believe that individuals deserve those pathways to be
Yeah.
able to have a safe exploration. It's like, it's
Change is
life.
possible.
Yeah, well, it's life archaeology to say, sometimes we just have these toxic things within us that continue to cause harm, that continue to be residue, continue to show up in our actions. But if we can start to develop tools to begin, again, that excavation work of what's in here, why is it here? And then not add on the shame and the blame and the guilt and all the things, but acknowledgement and accountability, and understanding, and then growth, being able to evolve and to understand from that. That makes a lot more sense to me than whatever is happening now.
Yeah, I mean, we do. And it comes down to choice, is what I hear you saying, is like we have the choice to stay in the groove, to perpetuate what has been just because, quote unquote, it works. I don't know if it works from my perspective, but for some people, it seems to work. And what I hear you saying is, I don't think it's working and I want to explore other ways, other avenues.
Well, and that's to acknowledge that there's global trauma happening for, people who engage. I suppose there are absolutely people who can still be unaffected by a global harm. I guess they're there because it's still happening. So there must be some who are unaffected by it. But just this sort of reset to be able to acknowledge what it's really like to be in survival mode, to be kind of stuck in that on that. I think just for, you the person out having their day might not realize that when the door shuts too quickly or there's a line in the store, and all of these things sort of become much more of a heightened embodied experience of stress that I think people are exhausted and don't always understand that there's so many just let's rewind for a second. We have not evolved our brains fast enough for the technology that we are exposed to every day. And that alone, like just scrolling alone, is leaving us in such a dysregulated state that then you actually add the content of what we're taking in. And then you add on that some of it's artificial and some of it's real and some of it's intended to be manipulative. That, again, how do we clear away the stuff? How do we start to make those connections to ourselves that are true and authentic and down to our core? And for a lot of people, that's uncomfortable because again, there's this potentially traumatic history that we don't always want to do that excavation work because it hurts too. And if we're in this stable place, well, maybe we'll stay in this stable place instead of starting to just gently chisel. I think that's where the practice is too. That you can come in with the sweetest, tiniest little like feathery brush and just slowly chisel away, or you can say like that needs like a steamroller or whatever to
A
just
bulldozer.
shovel that out. We're taking it all. Or I think that there are some harms that people have lived with that are so tender that really take that gentle space. And that's where I think the timing, but also let's all acknowledge that most likely every single person we encounter every day has some level of that they're working through. That's adding to our reactions, to our vision of one another, to all the isms that come into society. Where did those start? And how can we just start to sift through it? But coming from a place of union and connection and curiosity rather than destruction, because we sort of need each other and the planet.
For sure. Yeah, there's so much shame already built into the way, at least here in the United States, where I've lived most of my life, like, it's hard not to swim through these waters and not take on shame or feeling guilty for something. You don't even know you're taking it on. It's the waters you're swimming in. So even someone who's like, "Oh, I'm just going to a yoga class because I wanna feel good," or because my friend's doing it, or it's the new trend, welcome. Gates are open, because I promise you this practice is going to shine the light right where you didn't want it to be, focused on. That's the beauty of these practices. And so you are bringing these contemplative practices, self aware practices of self, of body, of nervous system into populations who don't always have access to all the other benefits outside of the system of incarceration and, like you said, mass incarceration.
Yeah, no, it's more, I think, just in what you just shared there, just reminded me like the one of the most, I don't even know, like just the things to me is the most beautiful part of this work is that the overwhelming majority of individuals, once once they have access to this work, are really motivated to share it with others. And just finding this place where, in an environment where community is not encouraged in the carceral setting, it definitely happens organically in some smaller groups and things, but there's a lot of, again, continued spaces of survival that are happening actively within a lot of these environments. And to see that individuals start to feel and notice something different about themselves and connect differently rather than coveting that and holding it, they begin to invite people. Just remember one very shining, beautiful moment years ago in a women's facility where someone new came in with someone else. And she said to me, she goes, "She's such a bitch, but she really needs to be here." So I invited her. And it was just, yeah, like it was just such a beautiful moment. And it's silly to be a beautiful moment, but it really was this opportunity to say, like, yeah, when we disagree or have conflict, but to still have that deep reverence for someone else's wholeness and journey and healing, and to recognize like I may not agree or like you or think whatever, but I still recognize enough that maybe this is a tool that would be supportive and helpful for you. And we see that more and more where this community is growing within these facilities where more and more people are coming in, and just to share the resource. It's not going to change the relationship that individuals have sometimes, but it does, because it just shifts that people are able to see each other, and also see each other in a way that I want to share something that might be beneficial and supportive to you, rather than not, because I can't get past those personal feelings. And that is, I think, one of the most powerful parts of this work, is seeing that shift. Individuals, once they're released, especially for folks who are able to do the teacher training on the inside, whether they become yoga teachers when they're released, but every single one of those humans, in my personal experience, goes on to service work in some way, supporting a population in some way, going in to serve mental health or sober communities, and just to, again, this is something I learned, maybe it'll help you. And that, that slow and steady, showing up that way could make an impact in our communities, and could support, some shift and some change, since everyone starts to feel, again, kind of unable to do all the things that sometimes we wanna do as humans, when we're still stuck in our own hurt and our own shame and our own journey. But as those pathways start to come, and people are feeling more connected to themselves, there's a more capacity to show up how we wanna show up. And the fact that time and time and time again, these individuals show up for others, um, you know, that's why.
My heart exploded when you said that. She's a bitch, and I think she needs to be here. Can you imagine? I've never even considered that. Like, that person in my mind who I'm like, that's a bitch. She needs to come to the next class with me. Like, can you imagine what our world would be like if we looked at the person we despised or were in conflict with that same amount of care as that one person you just shared? Like, that is coming from a place of love, like truly love. Like, she's a bitch and she needs to be here. Cause she could have easily been like, no, this is for mine. I'm going to keep coming to class. She's not going to be on the inside of this like community or club that we're quietly creating over here. But instead was like,
Yeah,
you're a bitch and come here.
right.
I love
I'm
that.
gonna include you anyway.
I feel like that needs to be somehow like I'm gonna create a daily motto of that walking around town. Like I don't know, there's a teaching there for me. I can feel it where I'm just like, "Ooh,
Come on, bitch, you need this too.
that just turned my world upside down in such a way that I needed." Because I think people on the outside, people think I'm very strong and like don't fuck with me, how nani type of thing. But I'm actually quite fragile. Like all these practices are in my life because I feel like I could break so easily. And so, especially the things that are really going to ruffle my feathers, we're going to put a lot of distance between me and that. That's my protection, right? It's like that avoidance, or I'll be so nice to you. You'll think we're friends, that fawning, that's another coping mechanism of our nervous system,
100%.
right? So I am in this place of exploring what does life look like in these different states. But I love that one. It's like, that feels so like a big, huge yes in my heart of what life really can be like.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, thank you. That is such a beautiful, I mean, wow, can you imagine what the world would be like if we all acted from that?
100%. I agree. I can though. Like, I really can picture it. I really, truly, truly can. I know it's there, and I believe so strongly in humans and people, but I also think that humans and people are exhausted and are
Mm,
overwhelmed and are just suffering to such a degree that there is no capacity to be able to
yeah,
take on the deep, trudging task of self-care and self-healing, and be able to create these containers, and to show up in advocacy for the rights of other humans. Like, it's just the things that I can't understand why they're not so universally accepted. But doesn't mean that I diminish my voice and don't show up and don't, you know, be there when there's a bill that your state is passing that's just beyond your comprehension of humanity. But so there's work to do, but I do think that getting into community where people don't always have access to this type of perspective, and just sharing it. It's not gonna be for everyone, but I do think everyone deserves at least access to see and to try, because it could make a significant difference. Even just in a little family unit, it could make a huge difference, and then maybe that, you know, blossoms outward.
Yeah, the ripple effects. We never know what our work will actually do. Yeah, I think that's one of the most humbling pieces of the work that you choose to do. Anyone in healthcare, anyone on this path of being a healer or sharing tools that help regulate nervous systems is you just never actually will know the ripple effect. And yet you show up and you do it again and again and again because,
Yeah,
yeah,
just because.
just because. I think you know that because, though, like, you keep showing up. If
Yeah,
it's an alignment, it's a calling. What is that? How would you describe it to others?
I just think it's important. Again, I believe in people, and I understand what it feels like to be hurt and disconnected, and if I know some tools that could support someone in a pathway through that, I just how could I not share that? Like, I can't, I'm not Smaug, I'm not, like, there with there was a Lord of the Rings reference, but, I'm not gonna just sit on this, little bit of information and go about my day because super hypocritical, in doing this work, but it just I believe in people, and I know we need healthy human energy to support the planet that needs energy.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe it comes really down to just it's all self-preservation, and I'm just doing this to create a safer, healthier world. I don't think so, but I'm sure there's a little bit of that.
And it can be both. It can be
Right,
both, right?
right. Well, just
So
yeah.
so how do you get through the moments where, because I'm sure you get criticism or feedback or, like, "This problem's too big, Jen." How do you handle the criticism or the backlash or the naysayers or the haters of the work?
I mean, I don't think that there's anyone to say like that. I don't think there's that ideology, but there is I believe in slow and steady. I believe in just being able to just like the practice of yoga, there's capacity that I know what I can show up for. I also know how I can support others who want to show up for this work too and be able to support in that way. But I am of the philosophy that if one other person starts to just think a little more kindly about themselves, that's a win. And if that person also says, wow, I want to support someone else to think kindly about themselves and just sort of to watch that, I think for me, the deep belief that that is a true possible thing that I've witnessed keeps me going. But there's a lot of bullshit out there. There's a lot of deep, deep harm, but I'm not going to contribute to that. Like, this is how I want to show up as a human and just share support for others. And it's my human journey. This is the kind of human I want to be, is one who shows
Yeah.
up for others.
And I love that. I love that about you. One of the things I don't know if the listener will truly understand, but something that I want to point out about this program that you've created is it's not just for incarcerated people, that the programs that you offer, but also the trainings bring together incarcerated people, people who have, what do you call it, graduated, left the system, they've moved away, they're on the outside, and judges and lawyers and people who parents who've had incarcerated spouses. I mean, you're bringing in community members who have touch points on all aspects of the
And the
prison
outside
experience.
totally, and the
Guards
public
didn't I think there was a guard in one of our trainings too, from what I remember. Like,
absolutely.
I think this is something that people don't understand is this program is not just for people in prison. It's like everyone who's part of the prison complex system is getting to
Beyond
benefit.
too, it's really folks who are, the for it is we're called Prison Yoga Project. It's absolutely our deep passion and our foundation. But the teacher training that we've created is really focused on social justice. So where are individuals coming from and where did they choose to show up and how can we provide skills? So, again, the foundation, our founder started in the carceral setting, and it's really what was grown up. The organization is called Prison Yoga Project. But for folks who come in, yes, some of them have lived experience incarceration. Some are actively experiencing or transitioning. But like you said, there are officers, people in all sorts of parts of, again, the judicial system. But there are social workers and teachers and therapists and individuals in active recovery, veterans, individuals who are coming from places within their community where they recognize for themselves, again, this is something that was supportive to me, but to deepen their skills to share this in community. So folks are going into schools, they're going into veteran centers, they're going into mental health community centers and things. And really graduates of the program are again taking this sort of ripple effect and going to where only they can go, where their unique voice is called to, and sharing this practice in that way. So I'm blown away with every new cohort of the individuals who come in, but truly the diversity of experience and even just their cultural diversity. It's usually a global cohort, kind of encompassing at least 8 or 9 different countries. And again, but folks who just recognize the power of this practice and that they're aware of a population of people who could benefit from it. So to come in to learn that. So yeah, it's magic stuff.
I just think this is the most important conversation people need to hear right now at a time when it can feel so hopeless. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What type of ripple am I creating? To really hear, to be reminded that everyone's work, whatever we've been called to, is for a reason. I mean, maybe as you also said, for us to stop and pause and reflect, like, what is the groove I'm creating? And is this a groove that feels in alignment and in integrity with the ripple you want to leave in the world in our short and one beautiful life of this moment until the next time? But wow, I know that I have always left as a guest to the Prison Yoga Project trainings. I always feel like I am getting way more than usual, right? Like, how am I here being a guest teacher? I'm just so in gratitude of the people that the organization brings together to have really vital conversations from different perspectives. So, um, yeah, we never know what our work is going to do, but I hope that this conversation brings hope and like, oh yeah, the work I'm doing, it may not be in like your work or my work, but like we're called to this work for a reason. All the healers are being called. This is truly what I believe. All the healers are being asked to rise, to do our
Yes.
work if we have our own work to do, which we all do. But, like
Side note.
my opinion, right? Do thy work and serve. Like we are here
Yeah,
to serve. The world needs all the healers to rise right now. It doesn't have to have a medical degree behind it. It doesn't have to have some fancy something around it. We all have our gifts. We know our gifts. It's time to share our gifts. It doesn't matter what other people think about it. It's all for us to see each other. And no one's version is better than the other. Like we need everyone. Like it, right? It's not a
100%.
better or worse than, but just like let's see each other. Let's lift each other up. And I hope that people are now going to be reminded, oh yeah, we all have a piece in this. And I'm just so grateful that you're doing your piece.
Thank you so much. No, I same likewise to you for this, these conversations, this space, just the endless things that I continue to learn from you. But I think it's important, um, even just to come back down to your intro at the beginning, that to really honor and respect, those who came before us, to have hold deep reverence for our ancestors and what they've given to us and what they endured and overcame, and to bring us to this space where to just continue to evolve and show up for ourselves, but also show up for those lineages and continue to unravel the stories that maybe couldn't be passed down, that we didn't fully understand. But it's just, yeah, to show up in this work and to amplify and to show up for one another. Yeah, individual personal sovereignty and just celebrating that for everyone. I always say in the trainings, like, you're the most important person. And until you can believe that in and of yourself, this is where the work is, to be able to say, like, yeah, I am the most important person, but so are you, and so are they. And each of us can only be the person that we can be, but we're the only person who can be us. So why not do it to the best of our ability? And just,
Yeah.
yeah, with all the things, because the dark happens too. All the light, the dark, the goofy, the sorrow, the emotions are supposed to be in our human experience. But how can we just, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to start going on a whole new thing.
Well, I love your whole new thing. I would love to have more time to go on a whole new thing with you. And maybe if it works out, we can come back into alignment again, and go down a whole nother path because you and I can have many, many conversations forever. I want to be really respectful of your time. Do you have to jump off or can you do a quick rapid fire?
Yeah, we can do the rapid fire if you want
Okay.
to. And then,
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
Okay.
before we go into rapid fire, if people do want to reach out, maybe they're interested in supporting PYP, taking the training, financial donation, getting involved, however they want, what is the best way to reach out to you?
Direct to our site, prisonyoga.org or community.prisonyoga.org. You can reach out to me directly. I'm Jen, Jen, at prisonyoga.org. So feel welcome to
On
share and to
Instagram. Yeah,
drop,
I'll make sure to have all those
yeah,
links on the
all
show
those
notes.
things. But no, just reach out, check out our work, and I'd love to just hear all the things. We're on all the social medias, all the stuff. But yeah, please just share, share, share.
Yeah, amazing work. I mean, truly healing, truly, truly healing work that you are a part of and spreading out there in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Let's do this quick rapid fire, and you can say pass to anything, okay?
All right.
Okay, best advice you ever received.
But definitely don't make assumptions, for sure.
Worst advice you ever received.
Don't be a yoga teacher.
Love it. What book or show has your attention right now?
Jacoby Ballard's A Queer Dharma.
Again, I will make sure all of these are in the show notes. What is the most mystical thing about you?
I really believe that trees talk to me. I don't know, maybe like conversations with nature, like real,
Yeah.
yeah, imaginary friends and talking to trees, maybe.
I talk to the birds. I get it. What is one thing you thought when you started your work that is different now?
Yeah, I'm going to pass on that. I don't,
No worries. What is challenging you these days?
global politics and policy.
Okay. Flip side, who or what inspires you these days?
Um, just humans in community, the folks who come into our programs and work, and just, I think the people who make eye contact when you're out in the world, it's pretty awesome.
Finish the sentence. Be the type of person who,
Always learns and evolves.
I always end. What is your one wish for healthcare?
Maybe focus on preventative medicine, but also just fucking people over profit.
That is our mic drop, folks. Well, I absolutely am so grateful for your time, your energy. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would appreciate it. Your support helps create positive ripples in our communities. Do you want to continue the conversation or have questions for the guest, or do you want to just explore more? Please visit yinspiredpod.com and it will take you to Substack where Yinspired lives. With your free subscription, you'll receive every new episode plus access to transcripts, show notes, resources, and the opportunity to join the discussion. From my heart to yours, create a day you love.